everybody. I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Zee Garcia. Hi.
And I am Liz Davidson.
Special guest Liz Davidson from It's Beyond Solitaire.
Beyond Solitaire. As in we go beyond just playing Klondike Solitaire.
But shouldn't that be then... Oh, I was thinking like this is a solo game channel, but more than that, therefore it's a multiplayer channel.
That's called Beyond Multiplayer.
All right.
Moving on.
Today we're talking about historical games or historic games. Is there a difference?
The spelling.
Yes, I guess there would be a difference, right? There's historic, like this game will go down in history, and then there's like historical.
Hysterical games.
Hysterical, definitely.
Well, all of us are either teachers. You are a teacher currently, right?
I am currently a teacher, yes.
Well, tell us a little bit about that.
I teach Latin,
What?
and I teach Latin at a high school. I really enjoy it. I have awesome students, and
But what do your students call you?
Dr. D.
That first word there is something we don't have. Or do you have a doctorate and I don't know about it?
That would be great if I pulled out a PhD out of my back pocket right now and be like, I do have one in the stupidest thing that they would give me one in. No, I don't.
Oh, no, that's the one I have.
No, well, maybe.
No, any doctorate is the tip of my hat for sure. That's a lot of work.
It is. No, I have a degree, but I don't have a PhD. No.
So we're talking about games that are good for history. When I put my list together, it was a mix. I picked ones I thought were good at helping teach history and also games that were fun, with the exception of one.
Oh, you have a game that isn't fun, you just think it's a good historic game?
Yes.
Okay. That's valid. That's better than what I did.
I will explain why.
I enjoy all of the games on my list.
I
will say
hate
that.
one of them.
Oh, no.
I enjoy all the games on my list. A lot of them are, I will say it right now, a lot of these are tangentially related to historic events. Some of these are just historic
long time ago
settings. You know what I mean?
Galaxy far, far away.
Are you trying to count Stone Age?
I don't like that game that much, no. But there might be Stone Age themes or other themes, because that's just not my genre. This was very hard for me, folks. Very hard. I'm sure the doctor here had an easy time.
But he persevered.
I tried my best. None of these are fictional character,
So you didn't go that route.
No, I wasn't like, this is a Sherlock Holmes game. I didn't do any of that. I avoided that trap at least. So.
Alrighty, well, let's get started.
Number 10.
So I'm up first.
I'm very, very curious about this. Like, I feel like right now I can say there's going to be no three-way crossover. Maybe. I think there's one game I think we both have.
Way.
I'll be interested to see. So my number 10 is actually a game that I never play solo because you can't. It's what always happens at game night when there are 6 players. It's Quartermaster General. Which...
Wait, I'm sorry, you said this always happens when there's 6 players?
Whenever there's 6 players again, like if there's just 6 people and we're trying to figure out what to play, somebody will say, let's play Quartermaster General, and then we play it. And you know what? I really enjoy it. It's set during World War II. You got an Axis side, an Allies side. So 3 players are working together, and the other 3 are working against them. And you're fighting over control of the map. You're trying to play your cards as intelligently as possible, but you can only play 1 per turn. And you're really having to make some decisions about what direction do I want to go? Who do I want to annoy this turn? Can I trust the other player on my team to handle this country where things are getting really dicey? And a lot of the cards have to do with real historical events. It's got a lot of that feel of fighting over the territory that those powers would historically have fought over, but it's still light enough to just be a fun game night game. I think it's a good choice.
Well, I'm sure you do.
I do.
2 questions. 1, do you like the Cold War follow-up?
You know what? I played it once, and I did like it. Yeah, but that was only for 3 players, right?
2, you really think it's a good game?
I enjoy playing
I'm just
it. Yes, I do. Yeah,
I feel
I do.
like but it's really abstracted, like really abstracted.
It doesn't feel abstracted when you're really mad at the person across the table from you.
That's the case.
That's real. The game might be abstracted, but the hate,
the hate is real.
All right. I still feel like we're going back to Star Wars somehow.
Uh-oh.
Hate?
Good, let the hate flow through you.
My number 10 is also a war set game, but it's a different war, World War I.
Grizzled.
the Grizzled.
Yes, I'm going
That's
to try
a
to
great
guess all
choice.
Z's from a clue.
Very good choice.
All right, that sounds good. This one is definitely also abstracted, which honestly is the reason it is 10. Because it's like I said, and this is not even one of my like lame picks in my opinion, okay? I do like this game. I think it is actually about that historical thing.
Won't be the judge of that, sir.
Yeah, no problem. I'm sure you will, but I can judge it myself. This one is about World War I. It's about this band of brothers, so to speak, in the trenches, going through the war, dealing with the weather and the misery and the chaos and the horror, all those things. Also, it's a card game with suits, kind of. You know what I mean? So there is that. It's fairly abstracted, but it's a good one. It's a co-op game. I think it can even be played solo
Yes.
if you have the expansion.
Yes.
I believe.
The At Your Orders expansion. I
Yeah,
think.
which is great.
I heard that it portrays. I still haven't played it. I heard it portrays the horror of war pretty well.
No, it's a card game.
I was tossing. I'll take that softball back and go home.
Go, because I disagree. No, I don't think it does that. It limits your ability to drop out early. It limits your ability to have a hand of cards when you drop out. It does things to replicate traumas from war.
Therefore,
It's a card game that has a war setting. It's a well put together game, but it is abstracted. I like it a lot, though. I definitely recommend it. Great cooperative game with a theme that feels different than most other lighter co-op games out there. Honestly, a really unique theme. I'm glad this exists. The Grizzled, my number 10.
and great art.
Great.
Yeah,
art.
absolutely.
All right, my number 10 I hate.
That's the one.
Yeah, I despise
Let's go.
this game.
Start off on the right foot.
Well, that's why it's number 10 and not
Well,
higher.
actually, I like my 10, but I hate my 9 through 1.
No, but this game is so good at teaching pre-World War I
Oh, we're going back in time.
tensions. Yeah, before your game.
That's like, we're getting earlier.
It's the classic diplomacy.
Oh, disgusting. That's
Oh,
disgusting.
yeah.
Yeah, I really dislike diplomacy, but there's no question it does a really good job at showing the powers. Because if you say, who was in World War II? It's like, oh, it's Germany and Italy against Russia and because of games. And then if I say, who was in World War I? I'm like, I think Germany, right? Again? And England, and I don't remember everyone else except America came in and saved everyone. That's a joke.
Okay.
But this game does a good job at showing all. In fact, America's not even involved in this.
Right.
You have all these different countries, and you use diplomacy to work back and forth. When I taught history, I used this in classes, and it went over like gangbusters. Even though I'm not a fan of it on a personal level, played once a day with classes and people talking back and forth and
Like a
doing
turn a
notes.
day, you
Oh,
mean.
it's so
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Yeah, one turn a day. What did I say?
Played once a day.
Yeah, once a day.
Yeah.
That would be, that's punishment.
My
Well-
kids, please, Mr. Rice.
Can we skip it today? Set it up.
I gotta tell you, my true solo player origin story is that I played this game once and then I didn't
That
have
made you a
friends.
solo gamer?
That's amazing
No.
and believable. It's not it.
Have you played it?
No, she's lying.
Yeah, no, I've never played it once.
I know you haven't played it because it
there's
could
no
be like
way.
6 hours.
No,
There's
no way.
no way. I don't have the stomach for that game. I already know this
No,
about
and
myself.
that's what people ask me, how can you not like all these backstabbing games? Because they push it down into a 20-minute. This drags it to 6, 7, 8 hours. And,
Yeah.
and when someone backstabs you after 4 hours, it's not nearly as funny, ha ha ha, at that point in time.
that's
But
tiring.
it does spread out over days with groups. It works really well. And it's a good job teaching history, and I like the rest of the games on my list. Let's move to them.
Number 9.
All right, my number 9 is a small box game, also set in World War II. It is Mech Heat. It is published by Sideburn Games, and it's a very small, solo-only worker placement game where you are playing the French Resistance, and you're trying to achieve different goals in the game on a tight timer, while also avoiding patrols from German sympathizing police officers, and then soldiers if you end up shooting any of those police officers in the course of the game.
I've never even heard of this one.
Got a good look.
I
I've never heard of it.
really
either.
like it.
That graphic design seems really familiar.
It is super tense. It is super dramatic, and you have to do a lot of careful planning. But sometimes you just can't pull it out. And I really think that it's a great, quick solo game for when you want just that little bite of tension, but you also want a fast game.
That's cool.
You've sold me on this. That looks
Yeah,
neat.
yeah.
Good, I reviewed it on your channel.
Except at the solo. Yes, I watched that.
I knew I liked it from the video. You're a terrible host.
Sorry.
From now on, every time we bring someone in, we are watching all of their content in preparation. That's a lie, you know that's a lie. My number 9 is Lewis and Clark.
Oh, I like that one.
I had no clue to go by there because you didn't give me a chance, but all right. I'll guess.
Oh, you're right.
Lewis
I'm
and
sorry.
Clark.
I will.
Not the dice game, but the board game.
Yes, the board game.
Got it.
Good job. I like this one. It's a worker placement game. You are also kind of doing a little hand building, not really building a deck. You're always holding the cards. But I enjoy the way this works. It's obviously, you know, the trip is what it's all about. So it's kind of a race game. It fictionalizes. Actually, it might not be fictionalized, but you have multiple teams moving across.
Yeah, they didn't have any real competition.
think so.
I mean, they had,
I think other folks attempted the same thing.
well, Chris Farley and Matt Perry.
For sure. They were almost heroes. That's what it's called, right? Almost heroes.
Yes.
I really like it. My brain just went pull it, almost heroes. Wow. I can't
That's
believe
a really bad movie.
Cannot believe I remember that. Okay. Anyway, yeah, you are on separate teams and you kind of, you know, going on the same trip, of course, but it's interesting. It's like the slowest race game ever, right? Because it's not really that.
Yes.
But I enjoy the sort of the difficulties thrown in your path. In that sense, it's very much like the real thing. I like the difficulty of how to manage when you rest in the game, how you achieve what you need to achieve, but also when you set up camp and rest, because you might lose time if you are carrying too many things, taking too many people with you. If you aren't nimble, you can't really, you know, progress along. So it's not always about growth. That's what I like about it. It's not always about if I can take 20 furs or whatever it may be, I will take 20. Sometimes you are allowed to take more stuff than you really want to, and you should be careful about that. Because when you set up that camp, you don't want to have a bunch of stuff you got to deal with. It'll waste days. I like it. I like it definitely at 2. Okay at 3. But really, 2. That's it. Game is way too long on a per player basis other than that. Yeah, it's a 2-player game really where, for me, that's how I do it. If you want to play longer than that, that's great, but I think it outstays its welcome with more than 2. I like it a lot.
This is actually one I played with others and am itching to try the solo mode for. So.
Yeah, there is one, that's
Yeah.
right.
Like a small category. Games I played with other people.
It's gross.
You would be shocked.
My number 9 is the most obscure game on my list, a small little quirky game from Gen X Games, and I found that most of their games have some lacking to, but this one was a nice, clean little design, and that's Dos de Mayo.
I am.
Oh yeah.
The whole game is in Spanish there, but this is basically based on a historical day. I don't know if it's still celebrated in Spain, or at least they talk about it. And in this game, there's a revolt, and one of the players is playing a revolt, which is essentially going to be unsuccessful, following history. You just want it to be successful as long as you can to win.
Okay.
You're not trying to defeat the French. It's not possible. They're just going to swarm all over you. And so the other player is trying to defeat the rebellion, quash it as quickly as they can. It's a little back and forth. It's really a war game, but it's more of an area control, movement style game. It's really neat. And I have a really cool version of this where they replace the cubes with these little metal discs that show flags in them.
Oh, that's cool.
It's really cool. I think it's in the Dice Tower library. But I really enjoy this one. I gotta be honest, I may have heard of this particular battle briefly in my life, but I learned a lot more about it after this. It just was fascinating. That painting I've seen, that's a very famous painting. But yeah, cool game, Dos de Mayo.
Nice.
Very cool.
Number 8.
All right, time for number 8. My number 8 is a very heavy game that shakes the table when you drop it, which is good because it's
Gloomhaven.
about an earthquake. Lisboa. So
Wait, Lisboa's about an earthquake?
it is.
Is it really about an earthquake?
It's actually about an earthquake.
I never knew that.
So Lisboa is about the aftermath of this enormous earthquake
there it is
that
on the
destroyed the city of Lisbon in 1755, and it just completely wiped out Lisbon's, like Portugal's economy. It was one of the first like natural disasters that had international coordination to like try to help. And so in this game, it's a heavy Euro, but you're all playing nobles who are trying to get the most wigs, which are like fanciest victory points, because everybody had a wig for every occasion at this time, by rebuilding the city.
The most wigs.
I
The
could
wigs,
do this.
yes. So wigs are victory points, but you're doing things to try to rebuild the city. So you're, buying shops, you're producing goods, you're trading, you are visiting different noblemen who are actual historical figures in the game. And I think what I love the most about it is that every single mechanism in the game is a callback to an actual aspect of Portuguese history or culture from this time related to that disaster. And it's just so well thought out. And you'd think, oh, it's just a dry, heavy Euro. But it actually
It
isn't.
is.
It's got flavor because it's so thematically...
Tastes of sand.
I've never played it.
No, I don't know either. I'm kidding.
But I honestly, I've seen it. I've seen people play it. I've seen it set up. I got a copy for the Dice Tower library. Never knew that it was about an earthquake.
Well, it is, and it's a very good game. I really liked it.
This is the one I haven't played any Vital Lacerda game. This is the one I've thought about most. Like
Really?
possibly
Over Escape
playing.
Plan? Escape
Yeah.
Plan.
This looks, and plus he's said that, because I ran into him at a couple of conventions. He was like, he knows I don't like his style of games, and he said a couple of times like, you should try this one. I think you would like this one.
Isn't this the most complex of all of them?
I don't know, it's fine. I mean, we talked to some people at
Yeah, but
game
you're
night.
smart.
Yeah.
It's teachable. Actually, the reason I like it so much is it's easier to teach because it's thematic. So it's like, oh, you do this thing because it means this.
Oh, I love when games do that. It does help.
All right. I would like to play this one. Alrighty, my number 8 is a stretch.
Mr. Fantastic.
Stretch it out.
This is a game set in Japan, and it is about a journey, a famous journey
You did not.
from one place to another place.
Tokaido?
Yeah.
Very historical, everyone.
Yeah, it's about a journey from. This is it.
Good job, buddy.
This is technically supposed to be on a historic. From what Antoine Boza says, that there was a path from Kyoto to Hokkaido, I think it is,
Oh, he's backing up what he's saying by facts now. I can't argue.
where like folks would just travel this path.
Okay.
Was the idea. And along the way, they would do, obviously, he made up a lot of like you stop at this place, you do this thing, you take a picture, whatever. That's obviously not a thing. But it was supposed to be an actual famous route, and that's what he based it on. Inns along the way, a lot of the, foods are well researched for the game. So while it's not based on one specific historical event, it puts me in that world. I think it does a good job of putting me in the time period. I like it. It's not my favorite game ever, but I have such a hard time getting into a game that is about a historical event, especially one that played out in a specific way. Because then I just feel weird. I'm like, this is not what happened. So why am I playing a game about it? Am I trying to, I feel at that point I'm trying to invent a time machine. I'm trying to, wrestle something away from a real time and place. So I don't usually like that. Though I'll break my own rule about that in a bit here.
You're pretty good at doing that.
But I do like Tokaido. I find it pleasant, attractive, fun. It's not the best pick when it comes to a historic game, but I don't care. My number 8.
I respect that.
Mine. I respect your rebellious ways.
Lackadaisical attitude.
My number 8 is one of the games that I think you could play solo, but I would absolutely refuse to do so.
Why? I thought you were a
'Cause I
huge
would-
solo gamer.
Stop making references to my weight. But he's always calling me huge.
You look like the red M&M today.
I would say bite me, but I feel like
I think He's playing right into that.
inappropriate response at that point.
I get it.
All right. Anyhow, this is Uboot. Is it Uboot, the board game? Yeah. Or Uboot, or however you pronounce it, from Phalanx. Phalanx makes a lot of historically themed games. This one here is a cooperative game in which you need a computer or an app or something that runs a simulation for you.
Oh.
The game runs in real time, which is weird. So, like, let's say you have a 5-day mission that you're playing.
It takes 5 actual days?
Yes. But you can, like, fast forward to the next time something happens. So, like, at any point, you can slow the game down to real time. You can speed it up, or you can just say, basically, fast forward to something else happens, which is what you'll do a lot. So it'll take a couple hours, maybe 2 or 3 hours at most.
But you could sit there for 5 days.
You could, but no one would.
I see a live stream in the future.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
We're sitting there, still on our way to London.
Reading a book over here.
That's insane.
No, I really like that idea, though, because you can never stop the game.
Mm-hmm.
But you can pause the game, I guess, to look up a rule.
It's like the beat.
But you can.
You can't stop the beat.
No, but you can slow the game down. So what we'll do is, okay, our submarine's going to travel here to here, and then, we ran across some ships, or we see them in sight. All right, stop. And at this point, we're in real time. And then you pause and do the battle and shoot the torpedoes.
That part is in real time.
Yeah.
Like, you can't really stop and talk. Like, completely. You got to do it like...
Well, you can, but the ship's moving, and this causes problem because one person, there's a navigator, they're using tools and stuff, and say, okay, turn the submarine this way. One person's controlling the worker placement. One person's a cook, cooking food, make sure everyone's healthy.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah, I'm curious.
I can't tell if that's
Oh,
sarcasm
it sounds
or not.
fascinating.
No, it really is. But the thing is, I played this, and I'm like, wow, this is great. And I was not overwhelmed with my job of one of the 4 different positions,
The cook,
but I
yes.
would not want to run 2.
Oh, no. Yeah, no.
And
no,
definitely
no, no.
not all 4. And parts of it were really like a video game. At points we're like, okay, we got this, and this. Launch your torpedo, and that was my job. I was the one running the computer, so I pressed the button, and then you watch the torpedo, and we're sitting there. The ship gets hit and sinks, and everyone's cheering, or you miss, and then you're like, okay, where's the ship now? And it's really cool that way.
Wow.
The thing
Okay.
is, I think if you want to play this game, you need 5 players. You need 4 people in each of the positions, and a 5th person who's already played the game to explain what's going on.
Okay. Yeah.
That's how I played it, and that was great. Also, I haven't done this yet. I want to try this out sometime. I played it at a game store. I want to play it at home because you can play a silent mode where you can talk to each other, but you got to talk as quietly as possible.
Because the
you can turn
iPad's
it.
listening?
It can. The mic will pick up stuff.
Dude, get out.
That's really cool,
It sounds
right?
amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not like I'm making a thing in my head
Hey,
that isn't this, but
That part would be easy solo. You never saw the mic.
All right.
cooking
Anyway,
and, like,
number 8.
navigating.
Uboot, the board game.
Number 7.
All right, so time for number 7. Mine is actually a kind of literary pick as well as a historical one. It is Obsession.
Oh.
Pride, Intrigue, and Prejudice in Victorian England.
Wow, I never thought about this as historical.
So the reason I picked it, so it's like Downton Abbey, the board game. If you like watch BBC period pieces and you like them and you also enjoy board games, this is fantastic game for you. I got a huge kick out of it. But this actually comes with an entire second rule book because every single piece in here is so well thought out. So you can read entire things about what each kind of servant does in the household and like what all of the different spaces culturally would have meant in this time period. There's a whole lot of
Sounds good, yeah.
it's
What? That sounds good.
so
It is a good game.
it is actually. It almost like shouldn't be in some ways. Like it feels like there's so much thrown in there, and I remember looking at it and thinking that I wasn't gonna like it, and that I just could not stop myself. I really think it's awesome, but
You're trying to marry off your people and get them rich.
oh yeah,
Rich.
You're trying to attract the attention of the hot heir and heiress who have just moved to the neighborhood using the traditional courtship means of the time, like throwing events at your estate and impressing them.
Sure.
But the research that went into it is sprinkled throughout the game. It's in the rule book. There was so much effort put into making it really work that I'm just so charmed by that.
It also has the smallest deck of cards in a board game.
You mean like
There's like a deck that's this big
It's so small.
for no reason at all, really. There's
You mean like the actual deck of cards, like the size is
Yes.
a
like-
normal deck, but they're little?
Yes.
Is it a normal deck of cards also? Like a
No.
It's like
standard?
what?
No,
It's
no,
like
it's like,
12 cards or something.
Yeah, it's like a small.
You
it's
draw one every once in a while for I forget. I can't remember what the reason is.
It's like what the
Tiny little
Fairchild heirs
thing?
are into or something this round.
So it's like I don't know why it's that small, but and also I think the game looks a little bland.
Yeah.
The theme, I know you think the theme's bland. I don't think the theme is it could still have done. I mean, Downton Abbey, for example, looks gorgeous when you see it.
Yes.
But
No, I
But
get
this
it.
is also
just
a
not
one-man
theme I liked.
project. You know, this is not from a large publisher. This is one person's.
Sure.
passion
This was
project.
a Kickstarter project for
Yeah.
sure. I don't know why. It never even occurred to me it was historical. I was just like, oh, Jane Austen, the game. That's what I was thinking.
She lived in a historical
I
time period.
know.
You sicken me that you forgot this. Make good choices, Tom. Allow me to explain to you how good choices work. My number 7 is set in the Atomic Age.
Manhattan Project.
Yes, but
Energy
Energy
Empire.
Empire, because it's the one I like. Which is technically way less historic.
The other one has more history in it.
For sure, that's what I mean. Yeah, the actual Manhattan Project, the game, is historic. I would have no qualms with that one.
I'm gonna go get Mike.
You're gonna go get a mic?
No, I'm gonna go get Mike.
No, why? Well, don't get him.
Okay.
Don't go get him.
You got 6 more chances. Go ahead.
Again, the other one I think, well, you're right, would have clearly been a good choice. I just don't like it as much. I like this game more. And it is still about world nations, dealing with pollution, dealing with industry, energy consumption, and managing your resources as a nation and pushing for superiority in the world. All sorts of things are at play here. Way condensed, of course, because the game is not that epic. Though there's a lot going on. I think it's a solid Euro game. I like it a lot. This one is, yeah, not as much about one event as the other game is, but it's also more captivating to me. I find this game really engaging. I love the way that you manage your workers, the way you deploy them, the way you can generate energy and then use that energy to do more things on your turn. So a single turn early in the game might be simply acquire a card, right? One thing. Later in the game, a single turn for you might be deploying 4 workers, some with energy, some without, doing all sorts of stuff, And then every now and then you reset and you generate energy again, manage your pollution and all sorts of stuff. Put in drilling rigs, oil rigs, and it's cool. I like it. Manhattan Project, Energy Empire, about the well-known Energy Empire incident.
Energy
of
crisis of the 70s.
1957.
Okay.
That's my number 7.
All right, it's impossible for me to talk about historical games without bringing up Academy games. Their stuff's just, that's what they do. Well, that's what they normally do. They've started branching off lately.
That's true.
But this one here is set in a period I don't know a whole lot about, and that's 878 Vikings.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a fun one.
Yeah, this is actually a really good one. I don't know a lot about Vikings. I learned a lot from board gaming, like they don't have horns on their helmets, and they weren't all about pillaging, although it appears that there were a lot of pillaging and stuff. But this game itself, the invasion of England, it follows the same precepts that a lot of these games do. I think this series has a name, but I don't remember what it is. The 1775, 1812, and 18... There's another one. There's 4 of them. Anyhow, I really like this one, mostly because I don't know a lot about this period of history.
Right.
So I find it fascinating and interesting to see the different battles. This one also has different Viking leaders who are real people, which is interesting to me. So, I don't know. I like it a lot. 878 Vikings.
This one I haven't played. I played 1812, which is the Canadian one. Is that right?
Yeah, the War of 1812.
Yeah.
I feel pretty confident if you like one of these 4 games, you'll like the other 3.
They're about the same.
There's minor
style.
differences between them, but
I like the one I played. I like that it was 2 versus 3. That was kind of weird, but
The main thing that's cool about this one is minor is that they have little dudes rather than cubes.
Oh,
That's,
do they have horns on their helmets?
probably not. Like I said, they're pretty big on history.
Oh, I like my Vikings legit.
Got it. So my number 7, 878 Vikings.
Number 6.
So the next one on my list is a pretty heavy game, both in terms of its subject matter and its just weight as a game.
Gloomhaven.
Comanche. So, Comanche is a game in which it's for solo only, so solo players is excellent. But this is a game in which you are the Comanche Empire, basically, and you start with one rancheria, and you're trying to expand your empire, get more resources, train up warriors, but meanwhile, the people that you're sending out continually get tired, and you're also dealing with threats from not only other tribes, but also from colonial powers who are encroaching on your land. So it's both a really challenging game in terms of the decisions you make, and in terms of the AI, which is pretty brutal, but it's also, I actually ended up learning a lot
Have
about
you beaten it?
some of the easier scenarios. Yeah, I've gotten whooped on a few of them too, though.
I'd say yes to that. I mean, I wouldn't even say something. I'd be like, yes.
Yeah.
It looks. I remember this one came to the Dice Tower. It was a pretty heavy box.
Yeah,
I do not remember what happened to it.
but it's a more streamlined version of its predecessor, which is called Navajo Wars. So if this is up your alley, then there are actually 2 by the same designer in this series. But I really like the game a lot. I get tired when I play it sometimes because honestly it's pretty heavy. But I really, really appreciate it a lot, and I wish it made it to my table more.
Yeah. How long does this take to play?
I don't remember.
Days.
Oh, no, not days. A while.
Weeks.
A couple hours.
Couple of hours sounds vague enough that it might be 8.
Some hours.
2 hours.
A couple times.
A short evening.
4.
A short evening
short
is
evening.
a great statement, yeah. All right, my number 6. These are some weak picks, man. Who
Who wrote that list?
It's you guys ever heard of the Old West, the Wild West?
Yeah, most of that's made up.
Yeah, this is about that. Old West Empresario. In the West they build towns. That's a real event that happened in many towns.
My town had 6 cemeteries.
And that was a real thing. That's documented information that some towns were built during this time period. Well, this game lets you replicate that on your tabletop in less than it takes to play Comancheria. I like it. This is a tile drafting kind of game. You trigger powers. You're building your own town, your own grid with different unique abilities in there. There's a dice drafting element to it as well, where you're rolling some dice and then removing them to take one of a few different actions. You can, you can take a die and then take a building and build it, but you can also remove, say, a 4 and then trigger all of your 4 powers on your town already, or in your town already. And I like it a lot. That was fun. I'm not normally somebody who enjoys this kind of game. This one I did. Old West Empresario, my number 6.
My number 6, getting back to actual history, I like the idea of a civilization game. Civilization, Sid Meier's Civ is still the best in this regard. That's a computer game. And most Civ games are either extremely abstracted and there's no history in them, like Dominations and Tapestry. There's nothing there. This is the closest one I can get to, I think, to theming, and that's Through the Ages, which is also very highly rated on Board Game Geek and is still fairly more abstracted, I think, than I would care for. But I guess that's just the way you're going to have it. Maybe, you know what, 7 Ages is probably better. But 7 Ages also takes a couple years to play. Through the Ages, and this is the 2nd edition, I think. There's you can also play this on the iPad one on an amazing app. I mean, really well done. I play it with less than 2 people. But Through the Ages, a new story civilization lets you build up your civilization. You
Solo,
collect.
I mean solo. I'm sorry.
All right, Sherlock. You collect different famous people, build buildings, wonders of the world. There's enough history there that I enjoy it. I like it's basically an engine building game with historical trappings thrown onto it, but it works for me.
Nice.
You can actually, and if you play the app, there's actually different historical scenarios you can play too. All right.
I don't know. Doesn't seem very historical.
Oh.
Number 5.
All right, number 5. So my number 5 is actually a faster game, one that can be played in a very reasonable amount of time, in my opinion, an actual short evening, and it is Wars of Marcus Aurelius. This is from Hollandspiele Games. It is designed by Robert Dulesky. Again, it's solo only.
Is this that company that made the Belgium Brave New?
Yeah, Brave Little Belgium. Yeah, same company.
So you're saying this game has high quality components?
No.
Okay.
It does not have high
Just
quality
wanted to
components.
check
It
on
is,
that.
however, a high quality game. In this game, you are Marcus Aurelius, and you control him and the Roman armies in the Marcomannic Wars, where you're fighting against all these Germanic tribes. You're trying to keep them from making it all the way down to Rome. You want to suppress them all, and at the same time, you have problems overseas, problems at home. There's a card that you can draw where your wife thinks you're dead, and she's starting an affair with somebody else, which actually did happen to Marcus Aurelius. That was a good one. So there are lots of fun little...
Isn't this the dude in the movie, I know it's not historical
Gladiator?
accurate, Gladiator at the very beginning.
Yes, although Marcus Aurelius actually brought Commodus to these wars with him and hoped that his son would be a good emperor, and none of the things in Gladiator happened. Sorry, guys.
No, I understand that. I just remember the guy at the very beginning was called Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, the one who's played by Richard Harris, I think. Yeah, so these were the last big wars of Marcus Aurelius' life. But what's fun about it is that you have advancing tribes, there's some die rolls to win battles, but you draw hands of cards, and you have to use your cards to power other cards. So you're you can't keep everything, and so you're trying to figure out, what do I want to keep for the event? What do I want to play to perform an action? And there's a lot of decision making in there that I think is really fun, but still snappy. And it's got lots of historical flavor to it if you like this time period.
Sounds interesting. All right, Z, top that.
You got it. My number 5 is a game about murder called Mr. Jack. It's about Jack the Ripper. Bite me. That's a real thing. In it, you are going to be doing very historical things, like pretending you are, a policeman or other stuff.
Isn't Sherlock Holmes in this? You just said you weren't going to do that. He's right there in the picture.
It's about Jack the Ripper. Come on, man.
I mean, Jack the Ripper was an actual historical serial killer.
Thank you. My number 5. That's it. What do you got?
Right, my number 5 is actually almost like a right turn. I've been talking about these games about history. This is about history, but in a very different way. It's a party game, actually, and that is Timeline Histories, or any of the Timeline games. Timeline is a really good... Dates, everyone hates them. You ask people what they remember about history in school, they remember they had to learn dates, and everyone hates doing it, although I think it is a pretty useful thing to have a grasp on a timeline. This game does it in a really fun way, and you can get there's all sorts of them. Then there's a big one called Timeline Histories, which puts them all together in a really cool fashion. But you're basically just sticking them in order, trying to put one date in the timeline in the proper space. You don't have to remember the exact date, you just need to know kind of where it is, hopefully. This works really well. I play it all the time. You can get Timeline Americanas. There's ones with movies. We got one for England. I'm really impressed with this.
Yeah, this is good.
Nice.
Number 4.
All right, number 4. So my number 4 is a game that I really like, except that it is a huge pain to set up and play, and it actually does take hours because it's a coin game. It's Falling Sky, the Gallic revolt against Caesar.
This is not a solitaire game.
It is if you play with bots. So, yes.
Like, actually, you sit at your table and there's...
No. There's this is a flowchart solitaire game where you
that
control
sounds
one faction.
It's
and
a
then all the other
flowchart
ones
solitaire game.
flowcharts.
Well, where have I been? Because I got to get me Some flowchart
I gotta say
solitaire
though,
game.
that looks really cool.
This game is great. I mean, it takes a lot of buy-in, but then it's great. So basically there's 4 factions, which is the usual for coin games. So there's a Roman faction, there's a British
Yes.
faction not British, a Gallic faction that's Roman sympathetic, and then there are 2 other tribal groups that like to have insurrections against Rome. And so everybody has their own goals. You might work together with another player or bot for a bit and then part ways and betray each other. You know, there's a whole lot of balance in play because coin games are very much about it's a counterinsurgency game, it's coin. So it's basically about a dominant power that's trying to control an area, but the powers around them, those small, have ways of fighting back. And there's a lot of push and pull. There's a lot of interesting choices you make with your actions because every action, if you take a big action, you also open yourself up to bigger actions from the people who go after you. So there's a whole lot of balance in the game. And the events are, of course, beautifully related to Caesar and the Gallic Wars. There's one set in Roman Britain called Pendragon that I may end up liking better, but I haven't decided yet. But I like Falling Sky.
So this is your
for now.
favorite coin game?
Right now, yeah.
Ooh,
I'm
spoiled. There's no more on our list. Well, the one I often hear the
I
most
might have
about.
one on my list. At least I'm bringing laughter, folks.
No, the Vietnam
Merry
one is the one I heard
Christmas.
the most about.
Yeah.
I forgot that. Was that the
Is
first
it
one?
Fire in the Lake? Is that the one?
Fire in the Lake, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I've taught Caesar in
This is actually the same
Latin
theme
class.
as your last game. I mean, I know it's a difference of
totally
like
different time periods.
300 years, right, or something between them.
Yeah, about that. Yes, actually. But no, I mean, I like me some Roman stuff. I can't help it. I'm a Latin
No, that's
teacher.
good.
But
That's true. When she plays these games, if you cannot speak Latin, she will not respond to you if she plays the Romans.
Skilly cat.
Can you? Huh?
I said obviously. I do
the
speak
students-
Latin with my students.
Do the
Yeah.
students that you speak Latin to, do they use it as like a secret code in classes?
They do. One of my students advertised Latin to other kids at the 8th grade fair this year as a way to insult his brother-in-law and call him stupid without him ever knowing it. So, yes.
You must be proud.
So proud. Very proud.
All right, Z, follow that one.
It's rude. All right. Caveman.
Okay, well, I feel like you're trying more now.
Really?
I've never played this game, so I'm assuming it's a very historical charged game. It looks good. All right.
What can I say? I'm dying inside. Yeah, it's great. Number 4.
What is this? I actually never played this one.
It's a card game.
Thanks.
Great.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm
Thanks.
crying for you. Oh, I am crying.
All right. Well, all right. I'll learn more later, I guess. Now, my number 4, very historical. I actually don't want to play this one all the time, though, because it's slightly depressing to me if I make any mistakes in this game, which you're bound to do. It's a cooperative game, Freedom, the Underground Railroad.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's a really good game. In this game, you are helping slaves escape to Canada, pre-Civil War days, and like you can get them to the north, but even then they're not completely safe. And as the game goes by, it is very possible you may have to sacrifice some to get other ones to safety, and that just feels horrific. I mean, it is horrific, really,
Yeah.
right? And fortunately, it's kind of weird. They did a really good job at bringing the theme out without making it too
Manipulative.
hard, and it's also cooperative, which is good because I can't imagine anybody wanting to play the bad guys in this particular scenario. It's I could be like a demon monster. I'm going to destroy Earth first, right? Over being a slave capturer, that would be a tough thing. But it's really well done. Lots of history on the cards. It's phenomenal. This is the second one on my list from Academy Games. Like I said, they really do a good
but
job.
it doesn't
with this.
feel manipulative. I think that's important. It feels real, and it's very well researched. But yeah, they don't try to manipulate the player.
It's also a
feeling
solid
bad.
game too.
It is,
is.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great choice. And I like that they chose a difficult subject. I kind of feel like games are a great opportunity, right, if done well, to make you confront something that's hard, or to make you have another look at a historical period or a reality of that period that maybe you didn't want to. So.
Yeah.
Yes, I got approval from Liz.
Number 3.
Woo, top 3.
All right, number 3. So this is a game I love, both as a solo game and as a historical exploration, and that is Pavlov's House. It is designed by David Thompson, who makes a lot of really interesting games with historical themes. But Pavlov's House is set in the Battle of Stalingrad, and it's you're reenacting a true story about these Russians under a commander named Pavlov, so it's not Pavlov's dogs, it's a different Pavlov, who they're basically trying to hold down a fortified apartment building that the Germans are trying to take over. And you have all these really difficult choices to make in terms of what resources you're going to try to get into the house, and who you're going to try to fight against, and how you're going to, use very limited actions. It's a tough game. It makes you feel so trapped, but like in a good way. It's a very tense, fiery game, and I really love to play it. But the research that went into the game is also really stunning. Like, David Thompson went to huge effort to find actual images of the people in the house. He read lots of accounts of this event and actually, made game choices that contradict some of the propaganda that Russia wrote about it. And that, he basically tried to create the most realistic simulation of what could have actually happened that is still fun as possible. And it's a blast to play. I learned a lot playing it.
You said this
It's
is
great.
solo?
Yeah, no. It's best solo. It's one of those games where so there's 3 phases to each turn. So you can have one person play the Russians and the other play the Germans. And that is a fun way to play. Theoretically, you could play with 3 people. So one person being the Russian army, one person being the Germans, and one person being the guys who are holed up in Pavlov's house. But I think it's best at 1, maybe at 2.
Is that like a real thing from the side of the house that they fought in? I don't know. That cover is like fascinating me.
I think that is a monument commemorating what happened there. That is
kind of cool.
It's
I never heard of this.
a really cool game.
That's good. I've learned something from this list. I want to keep learning.
Here we go. The hits keep coming, folks.
I'm trying to be positive.
My number 3 is Tokaido.
Okay.
I like the history here. This one obviously isn't going to go into anything specific. It's just walking around, kind of spending your action points, cleaning away the underbrush and covering the pyramids. But it's an interesting time period that this, you're clear, it's now-ish. They're relating to a time period or rediscovering a time period that I find pretty fascinating, is very foreign to us now. A lot of the thinking and ritualistic nature that happened during that time. But I like it. I like the exploration feel in the game, and I think if I want to pick one exploration game, one set in this, I keep saying time period, it's not actually set in that time period, but one that explores that time period from which the game takes its inspiration, is the one I want to play. That's the one I want to go to. So I really like Tokaido. It's a fun game. Number 3.
Well, we're recording this in the year 2020, and it's going to shape up to be, I think we can all agree, a fairly contentious U.S. presidential election. I don't think anyone can make a game about that with someone getting mad. So we have to go back 60 years to 1960, the making of the president. And there's probably some 75, 80-year-old people who might still get mad about this, but hopefully it's far enough in the past that we can have fun with the game. A very close election. Presidential elections fascinate me. We were just talking about this the other night. We were discussing the primaries from a game perspective, like, this and numbers, and that's interesting, except I know that there's real things on the line. But this happened 60 years ago. So again, this is from Jason Matthews and Christian Leonhard. This was a follow-up of sorts to Twilight Struggle, much lighter game, but it does a really good job at the election that happened. Right. And it was a very close election. It was the first election that had a TV debate in it, so it was a big deal. And all the cards in this game are very historical. You can follow the election. You can diverge history, and obviously a different president could win I really like it. It's a really fun, fascinating game, and I love the history and everything behind it. I did not know much about. I mean, these are two of the most famous presidents of America for various reasons. But I did not know much about this election until I played this game. So, 1960, the making of a president.
Cool.
Very cool.
Number 2.
Still no crossover. I'm expecting Zee and Liz to cross over at
It's
some
about
point.
to happen. So my number
way.
2.
That's a joke.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So I actually picked my number 2 because it hits so close to home and covers events that are happened and are happening in our lifetimes, and that is Labyrinth: The War on Terror. I love this game. It's a rough game.
This one's harder for me because it's happening now.
And so for me, I think what makes it so valuable is that it's happening now, if that makes sense. I think it's a really interesting way to confront events that, I remember too, that I lived through. I mean, I remember being on, on a trip with my grandparents when we declared war on Iraq. And I remember the assassination of Benazir Bhutto, and these events appear in the game. So Labyrinth it shares a lot of DNA with Twilight Struggle, but it has a solo mode, which I appreciate very much. But in a 2-player game, one side will play the jihadists who are basically trying to have a war of hearts and minds with and or get a nuclear weapon into the United States, while the United States is trying to create political stability in their favor in the Middle East and in other, in basically regions that could have terrorist cells. So you are playing cards that reflect actual events, that reflect actual things that you might have seen in the news, and the game has been updated. So I think the original one.
Oh, really?
It was like 2001 is something, and then they had an expansion that was that took you up to 2010. And then there's one that's 2015 and whenever that either is about to come out or is out that I'm really excited to play. So it keeps getting updated, and I see it as a really interesting set of shifting reflections on what we're all living through and one of the big conflicts of our lifetimes.
No, that's true. I didn't want to get too involved in this because I didn't want to play the terrorist. Again, I love, Zee knows when we play games, I'll always be the bad guys. I don't care. Mm-hmm. But it's when they're people that exist now, it's harder for me. That's a little bit more difficult to put yourself in that thing.
Right, it doesn't feel like a game at that point.
I also felt, for me, this game was a little looser and not as tight as Twilight Struggle, which it definitely was trying to mimic.
Yes.
And I thought the rules were a little more difficult to grasp.
I can't disagree with that. I just kind of feel like because it's so raw, and it's a game that's really trying to confront something that is so real, that it has a lot of value for me as a gamer, thinking about what games can do for you, how games can help you think through something. I just feel like it stands on its own as a powerful entry in that particular way.
Good. All right, Zee. Each one of these gets harder for you to follow.
Yeah. Well, mine's a game. It's a Roman game called Fall of Rome. Pandemic Fall of Rome.
All right.
I thought you were going to put Pandemic Iberia on the list.
No, because that's actually not very historical. All the diseases are about 100 years apart.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And this is probably not that historical either. I'm sure the invasions that weren't all happening at the same time, but it's also it's longer, it's farther away, I guess, so there is that. I enjoyed this one. I like the concept of this giant state, under constant sort of pressure and invasion and ballooning out of control because of its size and, I guess, mismanagement, if you want. I like it. I like it a lot. This is a co-op game, obviously, completely co-op. It's also got a great solo mode, and almost made my solo mode list.
Did it really?
Because I like pandemics in general as solitaire games. Fine, they're good. But Fall of Rome actually has a very different solitaire mode that I really enjoy, in which you are controlling 3 characters, but not simultaneously. Or rather, I guess you don't do that in any game, but you are cycling through them with the same hand of cards.
Ooh.
So you have a hand of cards in which you are taking turns through the different characters. There's a side area in which you can sort of bang cards or take cards away. But it's really interesting the way it all works together. So anyway, it's a very different solitaire mode. They put a little more time into giving you a solo mode in this one. So.
I need to try this. I've actually only played Pandemic Fall Run with other humans.
Oh, I think you'll really like the solo
You said
mode.
it like shamefully.
I know, it's terrible.
Gross. It's gross. Number 2, Pandemic Fall of Rome.
There are two periods I've read a lot about and really enjoy. One is World War II, but the other is the Revolutionary War. I'm really a big fan of that and all the different events that happened in that time frame. So my number 2 is 1775 Rebellion. I know I debated this. I was like, I'm putting 2 games that are very similar in the same list, but I just like them both. I also thought about putting Founding Fathers, but this whole time frame is such a fascinating time. The world changed so quickly, and the formation of a republic, which had been done to some degree by Greece in the past, but not like this, where people came together and thoughtfully put together a government. But this is even before that, where you're fighting here, but the fighting is there's a lot of political stuff in nature too. England's just trying to force these colonies to just shut up and stop, and divide them apart. And I just like this one a lot. I don't know what it is. I just like that time frame. So
I've heard great
1775
things about that
Rebellion.
one.
Yeah, it's my favorite of the lot. The Vikings one's also very good. I like them all, but this one has to me the most meaning
theme you
because I
like the
like the
most
theme a
also?
lot.
Yeah.
And finally, number 1.
There's still been no crossover.
All right, here we are at number 1.
Well, come on, man.
Is it going to
Step
happen?
up.
Not from
So-
my end.
My number 1 is a game that just impressed me so much this year. I absolutely loved it. I ended up reading books on the subject matter because I was just so into it. And it's PAX Premier, 2nd edition.
I've heard a lot of good
Designed
things
by
about this one.
Cole Worley. So this game is awesome.
Designer
It's so
Root.
awesome. Yes, that is true. But I love this game. This one. So as you can see, the 2nd edition is beautiful aesthetically. There's no question about that. But what I think I like the most about it is that it's one of those games that's not hard to play in terms of picking things to do. Like it seems very straightforward, except that it isn't. And there's so much thought that goes into the moves that you choose to make, the cards that you choose to play, watching what other people are doing. And all of this mimics this really delicate balance that was happening in Afghanistan in the mid-1800s. So there was an empire that fell, the Durrani Empire. And this was also during what's called the Great Game, where Britain and Russia were kind of having colonial fights over this region of the world. So you're playing as Afghan potential leaders who want to amass some power, and you shift your loyalties throughout the game between Britain, Russia, and Afghanistan itself. And it affects the cards that you can play. It affects the things that you can do. It affects whether you're going to be able to score when a dominance check comes up in the game. So at the same time, you might not want anybody to be dominant because you're amassing a lot of personal power. You can try to score that way. So you can either make the right alliances at the right times, or you can try to stymie a lot of alliances and have a whole lot of personal power, and that'll change depending on what stage of the game you're in, what everybody else is doing. There's so much like wild action actually in the middle of it, and it mimics what was actually happening in this period, and it's fabulous. And also has a solo mode designed by Ricky Royal, who, if you're a solo gamer, you know who that is.
I know Ricky Royals, and I'm not a solo gamer.
You're becoming one slowly.
No, I refuse. I'm going to play an 80-player game of Werewolf tonight.
By yourself?
Shut up.
Wow. 79 bots. All right, my number 1 is a game about the theater called Shakespeare.
In love.
No, that's a movie. This is a board game.
I thought you would have Timeline on your list.
Oh, no.
Too much
You
history.
got told.
Too much history.
No, it's just like not. It's about every historic event.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that when we were like.
No, it just, I don't know. That doesn't.
So basically, too much history.
Maybe, I guess so.
Has all the history in it.
Let's just throw it all in.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's
okay,
like
Shakespeare.
a dates game. Yeah, it's sort of. I like Shakespeare, the board game. I find it interesting. You are doing, of course, abstractions of a lot of things, but you are rehearsing. That's what the game's about. You're building the set. You are constructing the costumes, or rather hiring people to construct the costumes, build the set. And then eventually, after a few rehearsals, you kind of do a preview night, another rehearsal or whatever, open, you score the game up. It's neat. It's a cool sort of concept and an approximation of a theatrical production. And it does a nice job of kind of putting you in that world to a degree, definitely in Eurogame trappings, like I said. It's also a gorgeous game, an absolutely beautifully illustrated game. So, yeah, I find it neat. It's a cool, captivating, and very, in board gaming, a pretty unique, theme also. There's just not a lot of theatrical themed games. So, I get that question a lot. The answer is Shakespeare. That's it. I can't think of another one. So there you go. My number one.
My number one I've already alluded to quite a bit throughout this, and this one was an easy one. I wrote my number one down in the rest, and that's Twilight Struggle. And the reason I like this better than War, well, I also think it's just a better game. But that's because there's an end date at the end of this one. In fact, the end date, 1989, is also a game which was probably my number 11 on this list. 1989 is a great game, very similar to this. But I like Twilight Struggle because it spans so much years, so much history. And yes, when you play, you can have alternate history. I'm a big fan of alternate history that could have happened, right? So, what if the United States had taken Cuba over? What would have happened? What would happen if Africa had fallen to communism completely across the board? There's so many interesting things. This game does that well. In fact, they're making a sequel of sorts to it this year, I think. Imperial Struggle, I think it's called.
Ooh.
Am I right? I know they're making another one to this that uses less luck, from what I understand. This one has some dice rolling in it. But I love this. It has the space race. It has presidents. You play a card that show all these different people. And I love this interesting idea of playing history, not being so tied to it that you have to look up the 65 exceptions in the rule books, which a lot of war games do. And you'll notice there's very few war games on my list, but if people talk about history, it's often war games. This is war for sure, but there's also behind the scenes politics stuff going on. I just really like it. I thought you would put this on your list.
It's a great game. I just chose Labyrinth because they share a lot of DNA. Labyrinth's soloable. And I don't know, it hits me in the gut in the right way for me.
Well, we did well, I think, to bring Liz in because she talked about games that I'm pretty sure have never been on any top 10 list at the Dice Tower. So that's good. It's good to get different opinions. In the comments below, let us know what your favorite historical games are. Tell people about them. We're so glad, Liz, that you came and joined us today.
Thank you for having me. It's actually been an awesome day. I would do this again in a heartbeat.
All righty, well, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you all next time. Until then, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Zee Garcia.
I'm Liz Davidson.
Have fun gaming.